So what was it? What was it that led to your apostasy?
It's simply 47 years of living it and realizing one day that it's all bullshit.
That's a grand statement based on what?
Well, look, I'm from the United States. Let's not talk about Alabama.
By the way, congratulations to Alabama for getting rid of abortion. Brilliant. Well done, Alabama. And Missouri, copy them.
Put two people in a room. Close them up in a room.
Right.
You're going to be the raped or the rapist. Which one do you want?
I want to be the one that's raped.
So, well, you're an idiot.
I'm an idiot because I chose not to do something wrong. That chemical cannot be called love because the meaning of love is so much more than simply an interaction. It's about meaning. If I gave you a bottle of oxytocin, you wouldn't look at it and say, a bottle of love, would you? The way that I came to an understanding of what is true is through narrative. Your narrative of the world does not correspond to reality. Yeah?
Why not?
Okay.
I'll bite.
How are you both?
Yeah, very good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I wanted to apologise because there was a time, I think, when he brought you down and he introduced you over there, and I didn't get a chance to say hello properly, and he sort of introduced us as if he wanted me to say hello to you. So I just wanted. Now I said if I spotted you again, I'd come and say hello.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I know you're always busy talking.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
What's been the main subject today?
The irrationality of agnosticism.
Okay, you don't agree with the agnostic interpretation?
The agnostic interpretation is a fundamentally flawed way of thinking, because it posits as a certainty uncertainty.
See, I kind of feel like maybe Christianity did start on the agnostic route and then became literalist.
What basis are you saying that?
It's kind of like in the sense that there wasn't like a big, huge expanse of Christianity after 30 AD. Something that was developing in small communities, and some of them were persecuted, but not so much for the reasons that because they're Christians therefore they're a threat. It's because they wouldn't they wouldn't ask the right to congregate in certain areas. They need to always ask permission and govern. If you don't ask permission, then it's just assumed that
your knowledge of church history is terrible. It really is. It really is. And this is the point with the neo-pagan worldview, is that it constructs these critiques of Christianity based on absolutely zero study of the facts. Perfect. Firstly, Christianity exploded after 30 AD. Yes, it most certainly did, and there's plenty of evidence to show
in Egypt, I'll give you that.
It exploded right across the Roman world.
I know why in Egypt.
Yeah. As early as the first century, we find the dawning of the first century. We're finding evidence of Christian communities in Britannia. Okay, that's how quickly it spread across the European world. By archaeological evidence of finds of Christian artifacts dated to around the first century. Crosses, yes, Christian crosses.
But crosses are also pagan symbols.
Christian crosses, not pagan crosses. In terms
I know
of
the difference.
Well, one looks like a crucifix. So, in terms of Christian art, and it didn't just explode across the Roman world; it also exploded into the near Middle East in Persia as well. So, and there's plenty of evidence for this. BART, in his book The Triumph of Christianity, says that by around 325 AD, the Christian faith made up 50% of the population of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is numbered in the tens of millions of people. That rate of growth in 300 years can only be described as explosive. In 300 years, you convert 50%, let's call it 10 million. Yeah? Right, you do maths. 5 million people in 300 years, how many conversions do you have a day? It's a lot. So explosion is right. And in terms of reasons why Christians were persecuted, the reason why we were persecuted first by the Jews was because we said that Christ was the Messiah, that he had risen from the dead, and we worshipped him as a god. And this is why the Jews excluded us from the synagogues. The reason why the Romans persecuted the Christians is because the Christians refused to give the salts of incense before Caesar. Because the Roman motto was Kaiser est Kyrie. The Christian motto was Christos est Kyrie. So you couldn't have two lords. So it was our intrinsic monotheism that led to our persecution by Romans, and our belief in the Messiah Jesus Christ that led to our persecution by Jews. Now, this is my point to you, bro, right? Like, I think that you have dismissed Christianity based upon a very poor investigation of the facts. And I am simply inviting you to re-examine the facts and investigate them again. But this time, don't do it with, oh, I just need a couple of arguments to disprove Christianity. Do it that I want to see if there is really something substantial to Christianity to believe
I could
in.
go a lot more deep into this, but obviously
It's a lazy Sunday.
What about those of us who have professional degrees in Christianity, who lived it all our lives and now reject it?
Is that would be yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. And I would say that something... There's many apostates. Bart ERHMAN was an apostate.
No, he is an apostate.
Yeah, he is an apostate.
Bart
Sorry,
and I are friends.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So in terms of these kinds of apostasy, it's because the narrative, the narrative in which they have been discipled within the church, has failed them, and it has failed to allow them to engage with the reality as they experience it.
I don't need anybody to tell me what Christianity is. I know very well.
Well, that's fine. Yeah.
I read the Bible in the original.
So what was it? What was it that led to your apostasy?
There isn't one thing.
Okay, that's fine. What things cumulatively?
It's simply 47 years of living it and realizing one day that it's all bullshit.
That's a grand statement based on what?
47 years of living it.
47 years of living it.
Yeah.
Is that the sum total of your evidence for saying that it's bullshit?
No.
So what is your evidence?
That is my personal evidence, and that's all I need.
Absolutely, for yourself, that's all obviously you need. I'm not disputing that. But what I'm saying is you've got to appreciate that, to me, that's not a very convincing argument.
I'm not trying to make an argument.
As to why I think it should.
I'm not trying to make an argument because I'm not trying to convince anybody.
Okay, so I'm asking you, like, I'm not thinking that you're going to try and convince me. I'm not inviting you to convince me.
Right.
I'm asking out of human curiosity.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was bullshit? What was it that was bullshit?
Well, there are plenty of things, but I mean, how am I going to narrow it down to simply one?
Is there a fundamental one?
Sure. Well, not a fundamental one, but to give you an example.
Yeah, please.
I'm a former Catholic priest.
Okay.
I have a doctorate in theology.
Yeah.
Okay. I did a funeral for a 5-year-old girl
Yep.
who was raped and murdered by her uncle 1 week before Christmas.
Right.
Now,
Okay. The problem of evil.
that's a big problem.
Yeah. It's a big philosophical problem, but it's not a problem for Christian theology.
Sure it is.
Well, in what way? Explain to me what is.
Because dismissing things like Augustine, dismissing things like Anselm, all of that sort of stuff,
How does it dismiss Augustine's argument that evil is the absence of good?
I'm saying forget all that. Okay.
Well, no, I'm saying don't forget all that.
No, I am saying that.
Yeah, but okay.
Because those arguments have been around since Augustine and Anselm.
I'm going to posit Augustine's argument that evil is the absence of good.
I know Augustine's argument.
Right. So if you know Augustine's argument, engage with me. Why does the absence of good disprove God?
Well, it doesn't. The absence of good doesn't disprove God.
There you go.
The absence of good is not the presence of evil.
Yeah. And in that, this is why I'm just saying that for me, these are not sufficient reasons for the choice that you made. Obviously, no one's trying to impose and say to you that you have to do something
if it's
different.
not good enough.
We're just having an intelligent conversation, bro. I am not trying to beat you down.
I know.
I'm simply pointing out that to me, the reason that you've just offered for the reason for your apostasy is not a sufficient reason to make
you.
the conclusions that you've drawn.
For you.
And you also agreed that the absence of good, i.e. evil, doesn't disprove God's existence.
I said no. You said that according to Augustine,
Yes.
which is true,
Yes.
That evil, right,
Is the absence of good.
is the absence of good. I'm saying that Augustine is wrong. Evil is not the absence of good.
Yeah.
Evil is the presence of evil.
Even
That's
evil is,
it.
Evil. I would say. Well, okay. So let's examine this. Yeah. Evil is the presence of evil. If evil is the presence of evil,
And by the way, I'm speaking of moral evil, not natural evil.
yeah, no, moral evil. Would you agree that moral evil is a metaphysical statement?
No, not necessarily.
It isn't.
It could be, but
So
it is not necessarily.
To what are we appealing when we describe something as evil?
Well, if I stab you, right?
Yeah.
All of these people around would agree that's evil, and that isn't metaphysical.
not.
It's simply no. Well, I'm
there
pretty
are-
sure she would.
There may very well be some Islamists that might cry out Allahu
Right.
Akbar while you stab me.
Well, that's
There
true.
are Islamists at the corner who support ISIS.
I know that.
And I'm sure that seeing me get stabbed would not be a bad day for them.
And by the way, I have no intention of stabbing you.
I know you, of course you don't. You seem like a perfect... If you know BART ERHMAN, you're a good man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're obviously an academic, and something tells me that even though you have dismissed Catholic theology and dismissed the Catholic worldview, I
No,
suspect that...
Christian theology.
Well, you are a Catholic priest, right?
Yes, but I dismiss all of it.
Yeah, of course. But something tells me that information, that discipleship, that cultivation of your soul that you experienced whilst a priest will have not just left you, which is why I'm not scared that you're about to stab me. Would you say that's a fair guess?
Well, no, of course. I mean, I am a good person regardless of whether I'm a believer or not.
Yeah.
Because
So-
it's possible to be a good person and an atheist.
Yes, people
So
can
what do
be.
you believe in now then?
I'm an atheist.
Just atheist.
But I accept humanism. Humanism is what I believe. It's what I do. Atheism describes my worldview.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't describe much of a worldview. All it does is deny God's existence.
But,
Humanism. If you adopt humanism describes more of your worldview than atheism.
No. Atheism really isn't a worldview in the sense that you're talking about it. If atheism is a worldview, then not collecting stamps is a hobby.
It's a parasitic
mean-
perspective.
No. It isn't. It simply says there is no evidence, or I don't see any evidence for the existence of a God. Therefore,
That's
I
not
am
an atheist
without
worldview.
a God.
No, that's not an atheist worldview. That's an empiricist's worldview.
No. Well, you can be an empiricist and an atheist. You can
also be a Christian and an empiricist.
Of course you can.
So it
But-
is not something that is owned by atheists. is
No,
what
of
I'm
course
pointing
not.
out.
No, of course not. But all atheism.
You know and I know that atheism is strictly the denial of God's existence.
No, it's not the denial of God's existence.
That's a particular kind of
No.
atheism.
That's more anti-theism.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not. I didn't say I was an anti-theist. I said I'm an atheist.
Are you an anti-realist?
Define
So
realism.
when we come back to evil, on what are you appealing to say that there's such a thing as evil?
Well, again, going back to a non-theistic view of evil. All right, there's a philosophical proposition which is called, in various circles, the blindness experiment. And what it is, here's a box, and the only thing that exists is what's in this box. All right. Now, we put you in the box, and we put someone else in the box. You're either going to be the one who is raped or the one who is doing the raping. Okay? You don't know which. Which one don't you want to be? Answer: you don't want to be the one who is raped. Therefore, raping is wrong. Okay? We take two people, we put them in the same box.
So you just
You're
appeal,
the thief.
So you just
No.
Wait, you just appeal to the divine teaching of do unto others as you would have done unto you.
No, I didn't.
So in what way
first
was
of all,
that not an
Jesus.
appeal to that?
Easy. Because first of all, Jesus isn't the origin of that.
I know, it's in the Old Testament.
No, well, it's even farther back beyond that.
Yeah, because
the
it's
the original version of it is do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself.
When you were a Catholic priest, you know about natural theology.
Of course.
Right, so you know the Catholic Church teaches that the idea of the ought is a divine thing coded into nature.
Of course.
So obviously, it doesn't in any way contradict my worldview to point out that it exists outside of the Bible or before the Bible.
I'm not.
So it's not a criticism of my worldview.
No, I'm not trying to criticize your worldview. I'm simply saying that there is a way to arrive at morality absence of the invocation of some sort of deity.
But what I'm pointing out is that you are describing the reality that is naturally at home within the Christian worldview. And is not necessarily at home in every other worldview. The Nazis proved it, the communists proved it. You know, there's countless ideologies that we can look to, both atheist and theistic, that don't necessarily believe in the idea of do unto others as you would have done unto you.
Right.
That is something particular to the Judeo-Christian perspective.
No, it's not particular to the Judeo-Christian perspective.
So,
because it goes back beyond Judeo-Christianity.
Yes.
So it cannot be particular to that perspective.
But it is particular to the Judeo-Christian view. But
it's just most often quoted by Judeo-Christian people.
It's very central to our worldview.
Okay, but that doesn't mean it's exclusive to it.
I never said that, and I said exactly the opposite just 5 minutes ago when I talked about natural theology.
Well, then I can't be invoking a Judeo-Christian perspective.
No, but I can because I'm a Christian.
Well, you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So my point is that I don't find it irrelevant, and I don't find it uninformative, that when you try to construct a morality in the absence of God, to me, you appeal to the very morality that God gave.
No, I don't.
I would say you do.
Okay, you say I do. I don't.
Right.
That's fine.
Based upon what do you say you don't?
I just demonstrated it.
No,
there is no.
Go on,
I'll
let you finish. I'll let you finish.
No. So, a Chinese Buddhist could walk by here.
Yeah.
And I could give him exactly the same example that I just gave you. And he would say, well, that's right. I don't want to be the one who was raped. I could get someone who walks by here as a completely different religion still, and I would get the same answer. You're right. I'm not the one who wants to be raped. It hasn't got anything to do with someone's religion.
Here's the thing.
If you posit what's called the veil of ignorance.
Let me reply to your thought experiment, because it's a good experiment, but I think it proves something important. Okay. You presented me the option. There is a box, and the only things in the box are the only things that exist. There are two people. One of them will rape the other. Which do I want to be? I would rather be the one that is raped than the one that does the raping. Why? Because it is good not to rape. Do you agree?
I agree. It's good not to rape.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, if my only choice, which is in completely following the logic of your argument. If I choose to be the one that is raped, as opposed to the one that is not being raped, because by implication you're saying if I want to be the one that is not being raped, I'm choosing to be the raper. Yeah. Now I'm saying that the proper choice is the one is not to rape. That's what I'm saying. What I heard.
You don't want to be the one who is raped, right? You don't want to be that.
You don't want to be the one that is raped. So who
Correct.
are you then?
So
if there's only two, one the raper and one the rape.
Then you're the raper. But
exactly.
But the
so that's
fact
what you just said.
Rape is wrong. But the fact is, rape is wrong. So since you don't want to be,
hold on one second.
Since you don't want to be the one who is raped,
you're breaking the terms of your own thought experiment.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are, because
since you don't want to be the one who is raped.
No, because you're
rape,
one second. I'll explain why you've just appealed to an objective observer. You said in your thought experiment that there are only two people in existence, the raper and the rapee, right?
Okay.
And then when you said that you don't want to be the one that is raped, logically according to your thought experiment that makes you the raper, but then you said it is, and then you said, but I don't want to be, but it is wrong to rape. So then you're appealing to an objective observer.
No. Not
if I had to choose between being raped or being a raper, I would rather be raped, because at least then I am not culpable of sin, and the other person is.
No, that's not the point of the experiment. The point of the point of the experiment is to determine without any kind of appeal to a deity,
Which you did.
okay, which action is morally wrong?
Let's just go through the whole state the whole moral experiment again. Because I'm going to show.
I mean,
step by step.
There's nothing to demonstrate other than you have the rapist and the raper, right?
Let's go through the whole moral
If you don't want to, the whole point of it is, in the box, if you don't want to be,
I'll let you finish.
in the box, if you don't want to be the one who is raped,
Yes.
then outside the box, rape is wrong.
Right, but what you actually did, so you broke the terms of your moral experiment. So your thought experiment, these are your words, and correct me if at any point I misrepresent what you said. There is a box. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The things in the box are the only things that exist.
No.
I'm sure you said that.
Okay, if I did, then I misstated my own argument.
So what else exists?
For the purposes of the experiment, nothing. But the way that the experiment is meant to be tried,
Right, so
is in the box
let's restate it again.
to describe proper behavior outside the box.
Let's restate it again. There is a box. The things in the box are the only things that exist. Is that right or wrong? Is that what you said in the terms of your thought experiment? You didn't say that.
No, the point of the experiment is to decide, based on what is in the box, what is proper behavior outside the box.
So is there
That's
something
all.
outside of the box?
Sure.
Oh, so now there is something outside.
Of course there is.
What
There's
is
an entire world outside the
There
box.
is something outside of the box.
Right.
So
okay. So
then,
take the. Okay. So
then
take
the moral
box away.
choice. The
now
moral
put two
choice.
people in a room.
There we go.
So put two people in a room. Take away the box.
There we go.
Put two people in a room. Close them up in a room.
Right.
You're going to be the raped or the rapist. Which one do you want?
I want to be the one that's raped.
Okay. So, well, you're an idiot.
Right. I'm an idiot because I chose not to do something wrong.
No. No,
That is exactly what you just said.
But nobody wants to be raped.
So what?
Therefore,
Under the
rape
new
is wrong.
Alabama
So
law,
do you want to be a rapist?
under the new
So are you
Alabama
saying-
law,
wait,
you're
wait,
meant
wait.
to enjoy rape
Wait,
now.
let's reflect.
Well,
let's-
look, I'm from the United States. Let's not talk
twist
about
it.
Alabama.
By
It's
the
a
way,
different
congratulations
I
to
understand.
Alabama for getting rid of
But it was-
abortion.
it was one of
Brilliant.
the,
Well done, Alabama. Well done, and Missouri, copy them.
No.
So in terms of
Sorry to cut you. Do you mind if I do?
yeah, absolutely.
I think it depends what we're trying to talk about here. So I'm struggling to actually understand whether it's about morality or anything else. But speaking as somebody who's been raped, I personally find it quite difficult that Bob would want to be raped.
So do I. but
In the
that's
context of, yes, he may not be the one who's got the sin, it's the raper who's obviously committed the sin. But for my purposes, the amount of trauma and complexity and pain and the reality of part of my journey of being Naomi is because I was raped. Not the full totality, because obviously
Right.
you have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, etc. But my story is that part of being Naomi was to get rid of raped Brian. So I can understand the reality of that the person who is the one who's on the receiving end of rape hasn't committed a sin. But then there might be plenty of people in the church who would say, well, did you when you were a boy? I mean, I've had psychiatrists.
Can I come back then to the point that you're making, because the learned gentleman has given me a choice. I'm simply working within the terms of your own thought experiment. Mm-hmm. You said I had a choice to choose whether I was the one that was raped or the one that was doing the raping. And you said that I would not want to be the one that was raped. Logically, no, 1 second. Please, sir.
Okay.
If you state that, then logically you're saying that out of those two, if I can only be one or the other, I would rather be the raper. And that is the fallacy. That is the fallacy of an atheistic worldview. Because the only way you got round that conundrum that you created for yourself is then to appeal to something outside of the box. You appeal to something outside of the world that you had created,
and you're going to say that
and that was the objective observer, and thus you made an appeal to something outside of the natural world.
But I would suggest I would suggest it's not good to be the raper or the rapist.
Right, you're
pressing
it.
So it's not good for
But
either.
we're working within a thought experiment.
You're
so
pressing
it's a thought
it.
experiment that we're
You're
working.
pressing it too literally. The whole point of
Perhaps you should phrase it better then.
okay, perhaps I should, because because there's always something outside the observer. Okay, that outside could be and is all of these people here, and the people in London, and the people in Orlando, Florida, where I'm from, and the people in
Outside of the natural?
Anywhere.
And outside of the natural?
Well, you can posit that if you want, but you can't demonstrate it.
Can we talk about the demonstration?
Well, you can in a minute.
Yeah.
But all I was saying is that the whole thing with the thought experiment is simply to say that it's not necessary to appeal to the existence of a deity in order to arrive at morality, because what happens inside the box or the room or wherever you want to put these people,
Yep.
what is true in that little box is going to be true in the outside world as well.
right.
If we take it away from rape,
May I reply?
I don't want to. I don't want to be the one who's stolen from. Therefore, I'm not going to steal the money.
May I reply?
Therefore,
So in terms of your choice, you did appeal to an objective observer, and you appealed to that sense of ought that C.S. Lewis describes as being very fundamental to the Christian worldview, that God has codified in the hearts of all men that sense of ought, that sense of we do unto others as we would have them done unto us. And that which is true is that which describes reality the best, that narrative that describes reality the best. Now, in terms of our epistemology, there's a fundamental problem with strict empiricism, and that is that it doesn't take on the full totality of human experience. There are things, and I'm sure as a priest, an ex-priest, you already know this, that there are things outside of simple empirical investigation.
Like
moral codes, morality, rights and wrongs.
Again, I don't believe that that's outside of that you have to appeal to some outside.
You
deity.
said that it needed.
Outside,
No, 1 second.
No deity.
I know. 1 second. 1 second. Would you agree that morality, evil, good, that these things are not something you can put in a lab and experiment?
No, but I think that there are things that you would very easily get consensus on in the world, regardless of someone's religion, all people would describe, even if they define it differently, which is the problem with C.S. Lewis's argument. Even if they define murder differently, all societies would agree that murder is wrong. Okay? That hasn't got anything to do with the necessary presence of an invisible sky daddy granting wishes.
1 second. So we've agreed that there are things beyond empirical experiment. Now let me ask you this question. Do you also agree that these things that are beyond the realms of empirical experiment are still real?
Some of them are.
Some of them are. Like mathematics.
Okay, mathematics.
Numbers. Yeah? It's a conceptual thing, it's a real thing, but it's not...
Right, but the flying spaghetti monster is also beyond the realm of empirical discovery.
So here's my fundamental criticism. Because you're positing an argument that says that we can't believe in God because we can't...
No.
Well, allow me to finish before you say no.
Okay.
Yeah, even if... and it's a fault of my own because I do it myself.
I know where you're going.
I'm sure you do. So my point to you is that if you're saying that if you agree with me that there are things that are real that are outside of empirical investigation, it is a fair conclusion to make, I believe, and you'll have to demonstrate why it isn't, that it is not necessary to have empirical proof of God's existence, especially by the fact that we say by nature that God is supernatural in the Latin sense, and thus God is above nature, and thus above natural inquiry.
Well, I agree that it's impossible to prove or disprove the existence of God in the same way that it's impossible to prove or disprove the existence of the flying spaghetti monster.
Agree.
I mean, it makes as much sense to say God loves you as it does to say the flying spaghetti monster loves you.
Right.
Because there's no way
there is
proving
something.
or disproving.
Yeah, there is something actually. Who has gone around saying that the flying spaghetti monster loves you?
Forgive me for saying this, it's actually true.
Yeah, I know there's a religion. I studied religion at university.
Pastafarians.
Yes, Pastafarians, exactly. Right, now, bearing in mind that pastafarians, what are they doing when they say that the spaghetti monster loves you? Are they be honest?
No.
Oh, no, 1 second, sir. Are they positing something that is true, or are they mocking something they don't believe in?
They're mocking something they don't believe in.
Right, so they're not making a real statement then, are they?
Well, no, but you asked.
Yeah,
you asked me
but the
whether
point
I'm
is, you
saying.
talked about the meaning of language.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that if you're going to talk about the meaning of language, then you have to use language in the way that it is used. So when the the pastafarians say the spaghetti monster loves you, they are not positing that as a reality. They're positing that as a satirism upon someone else's reality.
Absolutely.
But when I say God loves you, and when you used to say that God loves you, you were positing it as a real thing.
True.
Now, let me ask you this question. Is love something that you can empirically prove?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, love is. I mean, you can demonstrate. You can demonstrate very easily. The chemical reactions that take place that draw one person to another, so on and so forth.
That's a reductionist epistemology in its form.
Why?
Because love is something that we experience at levels that are not simply something you can stick in a test tube. It's connected to the full gambit of human psychology.
No, I agree. But you can
exactly.
But you can
Allow
easily
me
demonstrate.
Allow me to finish. It's connected to things like meaning. It's connected to things like history. It's connected to things like culture. This is not something that you can simply dissect in a lab and say this is love.
No, but you can show the origins of it very easily.
No, you can't.
Sure, you can.
No, you can demonstrate an aspect of the mind that is connected to the experience of love, but that chemical cannot be called love because the meaning of love is so much more than simply an interaction. It's about meaning, and meaning is not something you can stick in a lab.
No, meaning is not something you can stick in a lab, but oxytocin
But would you say, yes, but oxytocin isn't love. If I gave you a bottle of oxytocin, you wouldn't look at it and say, a bottle of love, would you?
No, of course not.
No, you wouldn't do that. But if your partner, I'm hoping you've got a partner now, or your children, if you've got blessed enough to have children,
no,
or your friends,
I followed the rules,
or your friends come up to you and go, bro, I heard about that sad day that you have. Let me sit with you and mourn with you, and let me stand with you in all your pains. You would call that love, right?
I would call it empathy.
Empathy. Okay, so do you believe love is a real thing?
Depends on what you mean by love.
Love is that sacrificial action for the benefit of another. When you sacrifice something in yourself to benefit someone else.
Evolutionarily, yes. Possibly individually, no.
So are you saying that you don't love your mother?
Well, I did. She's dead.
Okay, God rest her soul. But are you saying you don't love BART ERHMAN, your friend?
We're buddies, but we're not. I mean,
you know, there's more than one type of love.
I mean, if you consider like buddies, somebody that you sit down and have a beer with at the pub, then sure.
Okay, so love is something real. It's something meaningful, right?
I don't know whether he would consider it meaningful.
Yeah, right. My point.
He's kind of a rascal.
My point is, you can't take the chemicals out of the brain. You can't take the chemicals out of the brain that are connected undeniably to the experience of love and say that in this bottle right now I have love.
Of course not.
No, of course not. Which means that
it's a bottle of chemicals.
Which means that love cannot be reduced by the reductionist epistemology that you posited.
No one said it could.
You did momentarily.
No, I said that love originates out of a chemical reaction which can be demonstrated.
Yes.
So I don't know.
But it's not love.
So I don't know if there. I don't know.
But it's not love.
But it may not be. But again, what you're calling,
so let's talk about
love, it may be simply an illusion.
So it's simply an illusion. I don't think that when your friend stands with you in solidarity during your mourning, you will call that an illusion. I think that you will say thank you. And the very fact that you will say thank you will tell you that it's real.
Well, empathy, there's empathy, right? And empathy can be experienced between two people without it being what you are necessarily calling
But it's
love.
real, it's not an illusion.
It's simply an understanding of human...
Is it real or illusionary?
depends on the experience.
I've just described the experience.
Like I said, to me it may feel real without it necessarily being real.
So, in terms of what we can know about the real world, are you saying that we can only know what we can experience and experiment on?
Ultimately, sure.
So you're saying that there isn't a thing called love?
Well, like I said, ultimately it may be a delusion, so I could be wrong.
So you don't
I mean,
love Bart Ehrman, your friend?
No, I didn't say that.
So you do love Bart Ehrman, your friend?
You're trying to be Tim Bruggencake and you can't do it.
No, I'm not being there is a problem. There is a problem, but he's got one arrow to his quiver, and that's all he can use. And once
I know.
Once he's shot it, he's out of bullets.
I know.
I've got many bullets. I got many arguments.
Well, I have to say, you're better to talk to than Cy. Cy's an idiot. But
my question to you, right?
It isn't an either or. I mean, for instance,
I'm asking you if it's a real experience.
If you have two people who are married.
You married plenty.
I know. Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
And by the way, just in case anybody ever asks, any priest would rather do 4 funerals than 1 wedding.
Fair enough. I'll speak with my vicar about that. See if he agrees.
Well, no, and the reason is you can never make the bride happy. However, the dead guy is just fine with whatever you do. But
sir, coming back to, I'm asking you about.
And so is his family,
sir,
as long
sir,
as you don't say he's in hell.
I'm asking you about what is real.
And that's the point. You don't know.
You do know.
No, you don't.
No.
Because you take two people who are married, right? No. You take two people who are married.
Yep.
They go on for 25 years.
Yep.
And 24 years into it, she finds out that he's had three or four of them.
Yeah.
And and then how is she supposed to define that?
Does the fact that she was deceived mean that there's no such thing as reality? Because that doesn't follow. That's non sequitur logic.
No, it doesn't mean there's no such thing as reality.
So what I'm asking,
it means that how she interpreted his love.
But
wrong.
But then but what you're trying to do is you're trying to extrapolate that into a principle in a very flawed Kantian way, because you're trying to say that because this person was deceived, that therefore no one can know what reality is.
No.
And I'm saying to you that you can know what reality is. Simple question. Did you love your mum?
Of course.
Right. So there is a thing called love then.
There's a thing that we all agree that's love that I would have experienced from my mother.
And it's not an illusion, it's a reality.
In my case with my mom, it was.
And what is God?
Huh?
According to the scriptures, what is God?
Are you talking about John 4:24?
Yeah.
Oh.
What is God?
God is love.
God is love. Ubi caritas et amor Deus ibi est.
Yeah, I get it.
So my point to you is
now do it in Hebrew.
It wasn't written in Hebrew, and you know damn well it wasn't.
It wasn't written in Latin either.
That's true, actually. Yeah, you got me on that one. You got me on that one. He did get me. Yeah. So let me get that. So my point to you is there isn't a real experience, yeah, and that real experience we can call God. And I am saying to you that you have experienced God, but you have been informed by your culture.
Wait a minute.
You've been informed by argument. You've been informed by the pressures of culture that is not God.
Naomi is a real experience. I do not worship Naomi. She is not God.
That is true.
So how is it that
that
real experience?
How
do we leap from that real experience is what we call God?
So then we have to take it further. We have to take it further, which is that love is relational.
A lot further.
Yeah, love is relational, right?
There's a lot more steps in between.
Yeah, I know. So love is relational, correct?
Obviously, you have to love something. If if we're going to use the common vocabulary, then you have to have an object for your love.
Yeah. So in terms of, because we're talking about epistemology, and I don't want to get sidetracked. The argument that I've just made was simply to demonstrate that you can know things are real without empirical proof.
If you're saying that you can know things are real without lab testing,
without empirical proof, yes.
Well, without lab testing, yes.
Falsification.
No, it's not. I can know that Naomi is real.
I'm not saying
and
you're
I don't have
falsifying
to test her in a lab. I can see her right there. She is.
You can experience. But I used love, not Naomi, as the reality.
But then you generalize to things.
No, right. But what I was pointing out is the flaw in your epistemology. The flaw in your epistemology is that it does not correspond to reality. It does not comprehend reality, because reality is more than that which we can inquire about through physical experimentation.
Okay. So
And thus, the argument that because there is no evidence of God's existence means God does not exist is a flawed statement.
I never made that argument.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Because when I posit God's existence,
No.
you say what?
No.
God exists. What's your reply?
If that's what you believe, fine, good for you.
That's the humanist in you coming out.
No, it's not.
Not the atheist.
To me, no. Atheism applies to me, and to me alone.
Yes.
Okay, I don't say, and now everybody has to be an atheist. No,
Neither do I. I don't say everyone
Right.
has to be a Christian.
right.
I just encourage them to.
Right, and I mean, I literally don't encourage anyone to be an atheist, right? Because it literally makes no difference to me, as long as you don't end up as an Islamist and go around and start blowing up buildings and tube stations and things like that.
Yeah, and hacking people down with knives.
Right. Then that
Trying to
bothers me
justify
because
sex
now.
with children.
Right. Exactly. Muhammad was a pedophile. He raped a 9-year-old, called her his wife. But the fact is that atheism for me is simply the lack of a belief in God. That's it.
That's what I said atheism was.
And so you are an atheist as it regards Zeus and Hera and Apollo. You are an atheist as it regards you are an atheist as it regards Allah.
It's a silly argument, but
No, it's not a silly argument. You disbelieve in all other gods. I simply take it one further than you.
Yeah.
That's all.
So in terms of this disbelief, let's look at why I don't believe in Zeus. Why I don't believe in Allah. Okay? Because when I was choosing my religion, I actually became a Christian because a Muslim tried to convert me to Islam. And he did such a bad job, I became a Christian out of it. Okay? And the reason why I concluded...
I agree that's a more rational option than Islam.
But the reason why I concluded that, because I really only considered in depth Islam and Christianity. You can criticize that as much as you like.
I don't intend to.
But I looked at the moral conduct. One of the reasons was I looked at the moral conduct of Muhammad, and then I looked at the moral conduct of Jesus, and I found that one was standing on a mountain, and the other one was standing in the sewer.
If you're going to compare Muhammad and Jesus, I agree.
Yeah, right. But then I also looked at the way that Muslims were describing Christianity, saying that, the Bible can't be trusted, it's been changed, Jesus never claimed to be God, the Trinity doesn't make any rational sense, Christ was never crucified. And I examined these kind of principles that they were using, and then looked at Islam from their own principles and found continuously that they were throwing stones out of glass houses. And so I found actually, well, if you're saying that the Bible's been changed, there's evidence the Quran's been changed. If you're saying that Jesus never claimed to be God, well, actually, he's very clearly stating that he's God, so that is just not true. And what I found was the arguments being made against Christianity were flawed because they were either partially untrue or totally untrue. And many of them could be reversed and put back onto Islam. So in other words, the way that I came to an understanding of what is true is through narrative. Yeah? Okay. Through narrative. And what I'm suggesting to you as a thinking man, is that your narrative of the world does not correspond to reality. Yeah?
Why not?
Okay.
I'll bite.
So, why not? Right. 1. The epistemology is flawed. Metaphysical things exist, supernatural things exist, and do not require physical proof. Numbers do not require physical proof, they exist, they are there. Yeah, it's a real thing. Evil is the absence of good. Good exists. It's not something you can bottle in a lab. Love exists, you can't stick it in a bottle. Okay? So there are real things that we experience as reality that are beyond the scope of scientific inquiry. And so the absence of scientific proof of God's existence is not proof that he doesn't exist. We have to look elsewhere to ask ourselves whether there is sufficient reasons to believe in God. Are you okay? Would you like some water?
I'm fine. No, I'm fine.
Yeah. So sufficient reasons to believe in God. Where do we begin the search? We begin through logical inquiry. We begin through reflection. We begin through examining history. We use science, and we use all of these things together to create a narrative that describes the world. And to me, that world makes most sense with God at the pinnacle of it. You take God away and everything else starts to unravel. Epistemology unravels, the consensus of being unravels, ontology unravels. Existential, coherent narratives about existentialism begin to unravel because God is the basis of them all. And without God, you start to fall into Nietzsche's relativism and Hume's radical skepticism, and you end up not being able to even know that you exist.
That's not the position of Nietzsche.
I know I exist because Descartes said so. No, I'm kidding.
I figured that you were.
Be careful, he was a Catholic.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But
Very intelligent Catholic.
No, he was obviously
All Catholics are.
A product of Jesuit education.
Well, I would agree. No, it definitely doesn't have anything to do with it. Doesn't have anything to do with the doesn't have anything to do with the Jesuits. I had just a little funny story as an aside, and then I'll get back to my main point. When I was in seminary, I had two professors, one who was a Jesuit and one who was a Dominican. And we were all sitting in the refectory one day at lunch, and the Dominican and the Jesuit were at the same table I was. And the Dominican said to the Jesuit, seriously, he said,
a real story.
It is a real story. This is not a joke. The Dominican
Sounds like you're setting up a punchline.
the Dominican looked at the Jesuit and he said, really, when it comes right down to it, when we both die, who do you think God will say was in the better order? And then the Jesuit, just looked back at me and said, says, Father Denning, I don't get your question. He said, well, look back in history, if you will. The Dominicans were formed to combat the Albigensian heresy,
yep.
and the Jesuits were formed to combat the Protestant heresy. Yep. How many Albigensians do you know?
Yeah.
And of course, we all laugh because it's a funny theological joke if you're in a seminary.
Yeah, it was a joke.
Right, but. Anyway, that's just my little story
nice
about
joke.
the Dominicans
It's a nice
and the
joke.
Jesuits.
Okay,
right.
back to the point.
In any case, if you go back, and this is why I don't think the epistemology falls apart, if you go back to my unfortunately all too real example of me doing a funeral for a 5-year-old girl who was raped and murdered by her uncle 1 week before Christmas, you have a hard time explaining that in the context of an all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, all-good God. On the other hand, take the all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, all-good God out of the equation, and now it makes perfect sense.
It's explainable.
But the problem with the God that you're removing from that equation is the God of the philosophers.
No.
No, it is.
No. I'm removing.
The theodicy is an enlightenment. It's even before modernity. The Greeks had the theodicy. The reality of the Christian faith, well, is in the crucifix and the resurrection.
I do.
Right. So that is about suffering. That's the real narrative of the Christian faith: the triumph over the suffering, the conquest over death. That's the real narrative of the Christian faith. The reason why your worldview collapsed in the face of that is because it wasn't rooted on the crucifixion and the resurrection. It was rooted on the philosopher's God. How can an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good God allow this? But that's not our God.
Actually, no. That question arises in the face of the philosopher's God, but it's not brought on by the philosopher's God. It's brought on by the constant insistence of Christianity that God is our Father who created all things. In your light and in your glory, you brought your Son into existence for our salvation.
Well, hold on. No Christian believes that the Son was brought into existence.
Brought into human existence. Sorry, I didn't.
Okay, fair enough. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, it's been a while for me too, but I just did that prayer.
Were you an Arian?
No. Arius was a heretic. We all know that.
Yes.
Just kidding.
There you go.
But no. It's been a long time
Yeah,
since
but
I
tell
did
that to the
prayer.
Jehovah's Witnesses, though.
No, I know. No, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm so sure. But no,
The Oneness Pentecostal.
yeah, no. It's been 12 years since I prayed that prayer, so it's a little rusty.
Very.
But
Christians, for the record, do not believe that Jesus was brought into existence.
Except Oneness Pentecostals and
They're not Christians.
And Jehovah's
Actually,
Witnesses.
They're not Christians either.
That's a prayer from one of the Christmas masses. Anyway, brought into human existence, right?
But yeah, I've just got to correct you because there's lots of people that watch this. He's misquoted the prayer. It doesn't say that Jesus was brought into existence.
No.
There's no
I
liturgical
corrected
prayer that says-
myself.
Yeah.
Right. But in any case, my point is that if we're trying to explain reality, and all of us are, right? I don't care where you come from, whether you're Buddhist or Christian or atheist or Muslim, whoever you are, all of us are trying to get along with reality. Okay.
Yep.
And so, from my viewpoint, and this is only from my viewpoint. Again, I'm not trying to convince anyone.
No one.
You're
I'm
able
doing
to,
that, but you're not.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But from my viewpoint, any type of theism that you stick in the middle complicates reality more than it actually helps one get along with reality. Granted, I will grant you, there are very, very many things that seem a whole lot easier to go through with some type of theism,
Yeah.
right? Because it is comforting in a lot of ways to a lot of people, and I grant that. And as I said before, if someone is comfortable with atheism, as long as they're not going around, telling me about ISIS or
Yep.
advocating that I kill someone,
Yep.
then please go right ahead. But for me, when you take a theistic solution out of the equation, now all of a sudden the world, in all of its wonderfulness and stupidity and horror, makes complete sense.
So let me address that point, sir, because it seems to me the only God that you've taken out of that world is the God of the philosophers.
No, I've
No,
taken out the God.
One second. The God that I believe in is a God that enters into the suffering of the world
I understand.
and redeems that suffering.
Oh, trust me.
Yeah.
I was Catholic. I get redemptive
Yeah,
suffering.
exactly. So the point is, that is not the God that you described that you was having difficulty with when you faced that tragic poor child.
Okay.
The God that you described was the God of the philosophers.
No.
So the Christian God is one who enters into his own creation, as you well know. And this is more for the benefit of everyone else than himself. He enters in. He's not like Allah, some aloof sovereign who goes, I'm sorry, I can't dirty my hands with you people. He's not like that.
Shut up and worship.
Yeah, shut up and worship me. That's not our God.
I know.
Our vision of God is someone who says, these are people that I care about. They were made in my image. I want to adopt them into my family. I'm going to solve the problem that they can't solve for themselves. I will enter into that creation. I will take on their form. I will elevate their dignity, and I will redeem them from the curse of sin through death, which leads to death. And death is the death of the soul, not necessarily the death of the body. That is our God. It's God who enters into suffering. So if God is willing, if God actually enters into suffering, that is saying that suffering is what? It's saying that suffering is not necessarily evil.
I would agree that suffering is not necessarily evil.
And it's saying suffering can be redemptive.
in the same way that a mother and father say, son, you're going to have this operation. It's going to hurt. You're going to suffer. But it's not evil because the purpose is obviously to heal.
Yeah.
So, okay. So not all suffering is necessarily bad.
Yeah.
But
a 5-year-old that gets cancer and dies, there isn't much sense to get out of that, even with the Christian God that you're talking about,
I mean,
which came into the human form and which suffered for our sins. Even looking at it through that kind of God, That example in itself,
I'll deal
when you
with it.
experience that, it's extremely difficult to explain.
Because I think
And even if it's just a liberation from sin, all I have to say is look around you. How's that going for the past 2,000 years?
well, I actually think the project has done some triumphant work. You know, like slavery has been combated for 2,000 years. We got to the point where we nearly abolished it completely. There is
But
a massive concern to help the poor. There is the fact that millions of souls have been that set free from the lies of an atheistic worldview. You know, that leads to communism and Nazism.
I'm not a communist. I'm not a Nazi.
I'm saying it certainly opens the door to it.
It opens the door to all kinds of things.
Yeah, of course it
So,
does. Exactly.
So does religion. So does religion.
Right, so does Christianity.
Because but one of the key differences is that
Including Hitler, I might add.
well, humanism isn't all that, to be clear.
He claimed to be Catholic.
He claimed, but we both know that claiming and being are not the same thing.
Well, I know he was baptized Catholic. He was raised Catholic. I don't know what he felt.
Well, I think if you look at
But I also do know
if you
that
look
on
at his-
Kristallnacht, he pulled out Martin Luther's On the Jews and Their Lies and held it up and said,
Martin
hey.
Luther isn't Jesus Christ. So,
No, I
you know,
understand, but he's the father of the Reformation.
He's the father of the Reformation, but at the end of the day, you know and I know, I'm sure you know, that Hitler was not someone who was following a Christian worldview.
Of course not.
He was following a National Socialist worldview.
Well, he was following his own worldview, but
Well, that's a National Socialist worldview.
but I'm saying that Christianity on both sides can also be used to justify
But
anything you want.
My concluding thought, because I'm going to go get a cup of tea, and you're more than welcome to join me if you want. But my concluding thought,
might.
and then I'll let you have the last word. My concluding thought is this: that in the one example that you gave, and I'm sure there must be other reasons as well, because you did state that very clearly. That the one reason that you gave and the way that you described it to me tells me that you did not reject my God. It told me that you rejected the God of the philosophers, and I don't blame you, because that is a terrible God.
Okay, I would agree.
So I would then maybe invite you to reflect on whether the God that you rejected for all the other reasons was the God of the Christian theology, or whether it was a God of your own construct.
No, I
Which
mean
theology?
The Christian theology.
the God of
They're the same.
Well, as far as the God of my own construct, this I have to say about that, and that is that everyone has God in their own construct. Because if God, if the Christian God is as majestic and as above, Isaiah 55, right? My ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. As far as the earth, as far as the heavens are above the earth, so are my thoughts above your thoughts, my ways above your ways.
Yes.
If that Christian God exists, then we all have God in our own construct. Because you would have to agree that if God is real, and God somehow communicates himself to you, that must of necessity be a mediated experience.
Agreed.
Okay.
And how do we Christians believe it was
therefore,
mediated?
well, you're going to say the ultimate mediator is Jesus Christ,
I mean-
but the fact of the matter is that if God speaks to you, then it's still a mediated experience through your own brain, through your own experience, and so on
Yeah,
and
it
so
comes
forth.
through narrative. Yeah.
Right.
N.T. Wright writes about
right,
this.
right. And so, if that is the case, then we would all have a flawed concept of God.
Agreed. But what I'm saying is
or-
the God
or-
that you
or-
specifically.
or-
But what I'm
so
saying
many
is.
versions of it in our head.
What
yes,
I'm
of
saying is that the God that you rejected was not in this one example. It may be in other examples it was the Christian God you rejected, but in this one example that you given, the only one that we've discussed, you rejected the philosopher's God, not the Christian God, because the Christian narrative is all about God entering into the suffering world and redeeming it in His own suffering self. And in terms of the mediation, as you know, and again this is more for the benefit of everyone else, Christians believe that to see the Father you have to look at the Son, because the perfect representation of the Father is the Son in human form.
Right, Hebrews 1.
Yeah, it's a mediation. It is, and that is our mediation. But that means that we have a prism, a picture that is static and does not move, which is Jesus Christ.
In which you understand God.
Through which we understand God. It isn't like those religions that have no mediation, that are absent and say that God is aloof and above and never enters into His creation. Because those religions, don't have any way that they can communicate about God, because they're saying that God is so other that when we say that God is merciful, it starts to mean nothing.
You mean Allah the Beneficent, the Merciful?
Yeah, that one. Because he's supposed to be merciful. You and I both know that mercy is a transaction, but he's also supposed to be sufficient. And if he's sufficient, then he can't be merciful before there's someone to have mercy with. It's a rational contradiction. We're made in the image of God, so when we speak of God being merciful, we look to ourselves and see what mercy is to get an approximation of the divine. But the most perfect example is Jesus Christ.
Perfect.
Now tell me, when you look at Jesus Christ and his suffering on the cross, and then look back at that child, what do you see?
What I see is a little 5-year-old begging and screaming for it to stop, and a heavenly Father who's too busy helping a little Mormon girl find her car keys.
What I see, and
It's God transcendent
what I
space
see,
and time.
what I see is that God has entered into the suffering of that child. Because
Not a lot of help.
He was on the, but you're assuming that the help that is needed is simply to
Make it stop.
Yeah, it is definitely that ultimately. But what I'm saying is, in terms of suffering, the ultimate cause of death is not the death of the body; it is the death of the soul, and that comes through sin.
A point lost on a 5-year-old girl who is being raped.
And no one can argue with the emotiveness of your argument. But what I'm saying is that is not a sufficient reason to say that God doesn't exist.
I didn't say it was sufficient. I already told you there's
But that was
47 years of.
Yeah, completely. I get that. But what that one example that we spoke about is not sufficient.
I picked it out because it's obviously going to be very graphic to all of those around.
It's the most
Right.
emotive argument that you can produce.
I'm not trying to produce an argument. I'm simply saying.
You produced a wonderful argument.
No.
It's just flawed.
You know.
Anyway, it was a real pleasure to meet you. What's your name, sir?
Steve
My
Seaver.
name's Bob here. It's not my real name.
Right,
But
okay.
there are Islamists around, so I don't.
Oh, that's
I
okay.
don't like using my real name.
That's all right.
So anyway,
My dad's name was Bob, so you're imitating a really good guy.
say hello to Bart. I love listening to his lectures.
I do too.
Yeah, and I'm going to go get a cup of tea now.
All right. Well, you have a great day.
You can ask a question so long as you walk with me, because I'm going to go get a cup of tea. Anyway, good day, guys.
Very nice.
Very nice. You as well.